toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the messenger, the spirit of guidance.
Welcome, everybody. This is our third out of 5 classes, making God a unique reality in our lives. So tonight, we're going to speak about that we have a part to play in God's becoming a reality. If you think about it, there's some things that we do that may seem pretty ordinary. We do them every day, but they can become a place of opening, a place where not only, here, I'm going to give you an example in my life. I like to make chapatis. It's kind of like a tortilla, an Indian version of it. Get out some whole wheat flour and some water, and that's it. And you measure them and put them together in your hands, form them, and get griddle ready for it. But when I'm doing this, often I'm thinking about how many other beings are there in the world that are making bread, forming a ball, opening it up, putting it on the griddle. So I feel like I'm connecting with all these beings. I think sometimes of the grains themselves and where they've come from, another kind of opening out. And then sometimes I dedicate my little cooking process to God and to all the realms that there are, so that what seems like a very small little operation actually is opened out into many beings. So I want to say, first of all, that we can become transducers of energy, transducers of light. And in this opening that we are thinking of, sometimes even in terms of what we learned from Spenta Our Mighty, to open the house of Spenta Our Mighty within us. Whereas Azerbaij taught us about being multidimensional, opening our multidimensionality, that scientists even talk about, that this is a way of changing the relationship. And in the alchemical process, we learned that it's really a transformation of the whole universe, in which the things that have been separated and manifested in specific ways become reunited, but in a new way. We can help God's becoming a reality in realizing that, we are some of those who have not only been incarnated as separate beings, but have found ways to reconnect. And that changes everything. So there can be a marriage of the elements that are multidimensional, that makes it a new connecting, a new process. We talked about the interference patterns that form when different elements of this alchemical process open to each other, so that we're not just little hardened blocks separate from each other. In using the Imaginal Faculty and using our relatedness to the divine, there's a playing out of this process that really are, another way of looking at them is a process of light. And tonight we're going to be doing some light practices that Pir Vilayat Inayat Khan developed and taught, as Azerbaij and myself being students of his for many years. And sometimes these have been available to you But I'm taking a special look at them in the work that we've been doing together, because in the step that we are right now, it's very important for us to re-identify ourselves as light beings. That we are light beings. You might finish tonight feeling that you're a light being, but for the time being in a spacesuit made from flesh and bone. You're in a situation where you are both seen as manifest and challenged to have the consciousness which is opening and uniting so much in the universe. So the practices have to do with working with the glance. In other words, the way that we see through our eyes. And also you could call it offsetting the glance. In this way, we will use our eyes, but with a little bit difference of the usual way that we see. And we will be challenging ourselves to not only take in light from the environment, but also broadcast light through our eyes. And through these experiences, many people have been able to really sense their light being and really feel that reinforced by some exercise, by transducing the energy, like I was saying before. This is a good example of that. And also using our imaginal faculty in a way that we're pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, that we start out feeling separated and maybe not as enthusiastic and full of light, but by the time we do some practices, we'll see. Hopefully it'll be an opening for you. So here's some beginnings in the words mostly of Pure Vilayat. So first of all, let's relive the archetypal experience of walking in the desert, encountering the sun, and realizing that you are also a being of light, as is this beautiful sphere, this sun that is rising. And also maybe you see the moon sphere over on this other side. Experience the emotion of light being absolutely effulgent, associated with a lot of joy. So close your eyes and experience this for a moment. And now, keeping your eyes closed, we're going to work with the eyes, thinking of them kind of like the head beams of a car. So each eye is projecting light outwards like the car projects light. One side and the other side projected forward. So rather than taking light in, you're casting light through them. So let's say that you're casting them out in a night sky. In fact, you're extending that light outwards all the way to a star in the starlit sky. And you're just very softly allowing this shining. It's nothing that you force. It's really kind of you remembering that you can do this. It's like you're communicating with this star. In fact, your eyes emit photons which travel at the speed of light. In 10,000 light years, it actually reaches a star. You can get a high with knowing that you're communicating with the light of the stars. Okay, and letting this visualization fade, just resting, allowing your eyes to rest for a moment. Now we're going to inhale, and as we do, I'll explain the process first. We're going to inhale with our eyes closed, but directed upward, so that we're looking up to the top chakra. You could think of it as your crown chakra. but your eyes are still closed. So practice that for a moment now, looking up to your crown or right at the very top of your head. In fact, the Sufis and the yogis found that the pituitary gland or the pineal gland was activated by this motion where the eyes are pointed up toward the top of the head. Another thing about this is that the spheres of light above the crown center, there are no boundaries to the crown center. So that when you are reaching up to look up like this, actually, you could think of that you are moving through a magnificent sphere of light, unlike anything you find in the physical plane. It's opening up to all the realms of light above you as you look up with your eyes closed. But now we're going to direct our eyes to the beams as we did before, but keeping your eyes closed, looking straight forward, again directing them towards an imaginary star in the distance. So now we're going to do these as an inhale and an exhale. Let's inhale with eyes closed, looking upward into the realms of inner light. Go ahead and do that. And now exhale, looking straight forward, but allowing the light to reach the stars as you exhale. So what you're doing is you're working with the uncreated light as you inhale, and then created light, but in the distance as you exhale. So let's do that again. Inhaling, looking upward into the realms of light, gathering light from all the realms above. And now looking straight forward to a star with your eyes closed, imagining it. Bringing that light into the manifest world. This increases, now breathe naturally. This increases your realm, your sense of your realm. Instead of focusing on things that are very close to you, you're focusing real far in the distance. So it's like scooping light from the inner realms and releasing them into the world. Let's do it again. Inhaling, looking upwards. Exhaling, eyes forward, looking at the star. But it's also radiating all around you, close and far, into all that you perceive in the world. Let's do it one more time. Inhaling, looking upwards, eyes closed. Exhaling, scooping it into the world, looking straight forward. Let's just breathe naturally for a couple minutes. Our next challenge is going to be, we're going to be doing what we did, looking straight upwards, reaching into the heavens and inhaling. But this time as you exhale, you're going to be opening your eyes, still focusing on the star beyond what your eyes see in the room. So this is different because now you will have a challenge. What your eyes usually want you to do is to focus on what is all around you. But you're really doing an inner focus on the star that's on the other side of all the things that are in your visual world. This is going to be helping to use your eyes as lamps, shining into the world, which is something that we often don't do with our eyes. But we are capable of doing this shining, like we were shining on the star before, but shining it into our own environment, shining it into people's faces and eyes and their glance, shining it all around us, being fountains of light, just by using our own eyes. And of course, the consciousness that comes in back of them. We'll use our eyes as instruments to broadcast light. All right, so again, what we're going to be doing is our eyes will be closed as we reach up into the heavens, inhaling, and then we'll open our eyes and we'll be challenged to keep our focus on the distance. But as exhale into the room, exhale your breath into the room and release the light into the whole sphere around you. Okay, so here we go. Inhale with eyes closed. Exhaling, open eyes, focusing on the distance and back, everything you see. Blessing the world with the light. Again, inhale with eyes closed, looking up. From all the realms are receiving this light. It's like blessing light. Opening our eyes, releasing the blessing into the world. Shining our eyes. One more time. Exhaling. Go ahead and close your eyes and just rest for a moment. And feel how different you might feel. You transducer. During this exercise, you fought against the gravity pull of the environment to focus your eyes. You do have some control over that, so that you can use your eyes as lamps to broadcast light. You can really have it going both ways, that you can be perceiving things in the environment and at the same time broadcasting light. So here's some words of pure Vilayat as you sit and rest. It is your being that comes through, not just a person projecting something through a channel. So he's reminding you that you are the light that you're broadcasting. That's just not something else coming through you. You're not a hollow tube. That is you that is reaching out into the world and blessing. It's amazing that you can actually do both things at once. You're part of the light of the heavens being channeled through an organ made of the substance of the planet, the one you thought you were when you came in here. We are transducers between uncreated and created light. Now we're going to experiment again, this time getting our eyes out of focus with the physical environment, and then closer to being in focus. So go ahead and open your eyes, looking as we did before at a star on the other side of all the things that you see here. And if it's light where you are now, it's in back of the light and into the darkness, and now you see the light from the star, but you're looking all the way there. So just get used to not allowing the room to focus your eyes. You're focusing far away, and everything nearby then is blurry. And it's trying to get you to focus, but you're not going to, because you're keeping the sense of space, the sense of your realm, the sense of how wide your consciousness really is. And now you're going to bring your consciousness, your focus a little bit closer, so that you see something that's in the room, but not totally in focus. You could turn your head too and look at different things in the room and see if you can offset your glance a little bit from the usual. You might even, if someone looked at you, your eyes might look a little crossed. But it's experimenting a little bit with opening that focus, which kind of gives you permission to be doing something a little bit different. You're enticing your imagination to do this process of shining that light. So now concentrate more on that, so that you're shining the light. And sometimes you can do it with a little bit of the offset glance, and it comes through a little bit more easily. And now let's just rest our eyes and close your eyes again. And I'll tell you that Hazrat Inayat Khan, Pir Vilayat's father, used to do this almost all of the time, doing these ideations that I was speaking to you about. And actually his wife was a little concerned that his eyes were getting a little bit crossed. But he told her, well, you have to, give up some things for some other things. So I'm not recommending that you cross your eyes here, but it is an option that you might not have thought of. And I'd like you to have another little experiment right now as the last experiment. That is, just close your eyes and enjoy that uncreated light for a while. Allow yourself to reach up into these realms. Like we said, there is no boundary to the crown center. It reaches up into all the spheres of light. This is all your domain. We are not leaving where we or manifest. We are stretching to all that we have been given, to all that we are related to all that you're being gifted with, and that you are given instruction even in how you can bring this light into the world. What a different story this would be, instead of defending our egos against all who challenge us, to be bringing light. And with it, light brings all the different qualities, the different manifestations, the different ways, the different possibilities. You are an important part of this story. One more thing from Pir Vilayat as we finish this section. We must distinguish between fantasy and imagination, he said. Fantasy is where imagination has become random. It has alienated itself from the overall order of the universe. Imagination proper, also called true or royal imagination, is either getting in sync with the order of the universe or identifying with that order. Then one's thoughts are manifesting the order of the universe. Say that again. One's thoughts are manifesting the order of the universe then. One's images are projecting the order of the universe. There's a sense of authenticity, especially when one is conscious of the divine being. And now, here's a beautiful sentence at the end here from Pir Vilayat. He said, now bring the heavenly light down, but only a fraction of it, because most of you is in heaven. And now one little repeat of last week. You remember when we said who, and hi? And the first part of it was to unite our nafs, or our Nasut self, manifest self with the dream body. But this time we're going to say who, high, connecting these realms of light that we were just experiencing, which are elements of the Java root, to the double that we worked on last week, the part of us that is the manifest plus the dream self. So you don't have to worry about what part we're connecting to. Just think that you're up with those lights we were talking about, looking downwards to the being sitting here, and you say, who? And then this being looks back up to these realms of lights and says, who? And then you kind of look at each other and say the word high, which means life. High. So you're bringing to life this connection between you and these great realms of light. So let's do this 5 times, starting with looking down from your light being. Here we go. Who? Who? High. Who? Who? High. Who? Who? High. Who? High. Who? Who? High.
So this whole series is called Making God a Unique Reality in Your Life. So let's kind of parcel that phrase. One part of it is unique, and one part is reality, and one part is life, and one part is God. And the making part implies that you, your human part, are making God a unique reality in your life. So as we've been experiencing with these light practices, and as Ravani Ra said, we are beings of light. And we've talked about this before, even from the physics side of things. We're comprised of energy, which is a form of light, and matter, you could say, is a form of like crystallized energy or light. So everything in existence is a form of light. And there's the forms of light that are in physical manifestation, but they're, as we've been experiencing in these practices Ravani Ra has given from Pure Vilayat, there are also subtle forms of light. And there are many realms in which our existence is comprised of forms of light. And throughout this whole series of classes, and some of you have been with us from the very beginning of birthing your resurrection body, awakening in your resurrection body, living in your resurrection body, awakening as a human divine being, developing the imaginal faculty of the soul. Throughout all of these parts, it's been about going from possibility to actuality. It's been about relationship of light in different ways. And it's been about the relationship at the beginning. It was this ray of light that comes from the divine central sun that each of our souls is a unique embodiment of. And it's about awakening to our existence in the world as a being of light that is trying to reestablish and deepen and open this relationship with the transcendent aspect of our being. So we've had so many classes about coming to the meeting place, coming to the interface, which we call the Barzakh, and what transpires from that. And we've talked about expanding the size of that interface so that much more can come through in both directions. And we've talked about developing our awareness as multidimensional beings, that we exist in many levels of reality. We can also say we exist in many states of vibration, including subtle states of vibrational energy, which is another way of saying we exist in many different realms of light, some of which are much more subtle than others. And there's a circulation of light between these realms. There's a circulation kind of cosmically that's just built into the whole system, because otherwise there couldn't be an existence and there couldn't be a returning light. But on a personal level, there's a circulation that takes place through that which is unique in us, with what we can call our personal Lord or our personal angel, this relationship that takes place through light, that at first seems separate. At first we perceive ourselves as separated beings in a dualistic state of experience and consciousness, and gradually we awaken to a capacity which we've been calling relational unity, a state in which we are in a much more permeable connection with what we're experiencing, in which there's no rigid boundary between us and what we are experiencing. And furthermore, there's a very deep circulation of light in both directions. And it's not just this side sees that side, and this side takes the light from that side and sends out the light from itself to the other side, but there's a communion of the two kinds of light, and there's something that arises from that, something that emerges from that. In the whole series on developing the imaginal faculty, talked about, and other mystical systems, Judaism in particular, talks about different realms of existence. And one realm is kind of the thought realm of the divine, in which there are all these possibilities of what could be brought into manifestation and creation, but they haven't yet become. And why haven't they become? Because it takes something on the manifest side to be able to complete that circuit, so to speak, of light, to enable something to emerge. And where does it emerge? We've talked about the new creation that takes place at every instant, that something is continually being born anew in every instant. And the reason we don't usually experience that is that we are caught in a pure light would say a sclerosed vantage point or frame of reference, in which we're so identified with what's been that we can't perceive something new that's coming forth, and we just extrapolate into the next moment a logical continuation of what's been there before. So all the possibilities of the ways that light could circulate and arise and emerge are truncated, they're cut off, and there's just kind of the reverberations of what's been. So it'd be like if you strike a gong, you hear the bong. So it's like the after effect of that gong, but you don't hear what's arising anew. It's just like the after vibration of it. And we'd like to get into the state of experiencing the living reality of existence. And how do we do that? Well, the practices Ravani Ra shared with us are very good methods to awaken this capacity to be able to not just experience subtle forms of light, but to be able to express them. So this is very important in our spiritual process of awakening, because oftentimes the way it's been thought of in the past is that we, as Ravani Ra said, we don't want to just become like this empty shell and light is just coming down in one direction through us. That may seem very wonderful, and it is wonderful in a sense because what's coming through is wonderful, but it's kind of like the raw materials of the possibilities of what could be if we awaken and participate in that which can only come through the light of our being. So I'll say that again. If we just are kind of passive observers and witnesses of what's coming through, then we can certainly get caught up in the beauty of it and the sacredness of it and so on. But the unique contribution that can only come through us is stillborn. It doesn't arise. And the purpose of our existence is not fulfilled, because each of our souls was created out of a longing for the divine being to discover an aspect of him herself that has not yet been born. It's not discovering something that's there and God just didn't know about it. It's waiting to be born, to be discovered, and to be furthered through the experiences of light. So we could think of even all the way down into our physical state of being and physical manifestation, that all that transpires, people, I love that word, all that transpires is a dance of light. It's an interplay of light through different vehicles. So here's one vehicle, my physical being, and you're listening to this through your physical being, but we hope that you have realized through all that we've done and your previous realizations that that's just the tiniest fraction of who you are. This is, well, people that are into online computer games where they're playing with other people, perhaps around the world, have what's called an avatar. It's like a creature that represents them so they can have a tangible form of something that's interacting with another avatar for the other person. Well, and in Hinduism, avatars represent like God incarnate, God realized beings. But we could say that each of us is an avatar of the divine being in a different state of awakening to not just who we are, because that sounds like something static. It's like awakening to a discovery of what is, as opposed to awakening to what becomes. We are becoming beings. We are embodiments of the divine being, becoming more of him herself than has ever been before. We are embodiments of emergent wisdom that can only come through us and our relationships with every other form of the divine being, with this circulation of light. So in the past, we've talked about holograms. And I've described the way a hologram is restored. You have the reference frequency of light, and then you have the interference pattern of light. And when you put those two together, you can see the 3D image of what the original thing was. And it's been said for, I guess, even since the 60s, the idea that the universe is like a hologram. Excuse me, that every part contains within it the information of the whole thing. And the idea is that you can kind of recreate the whole thing through a part of it. And that's very much true. However, what wasn't said back then, which I think is becoming more of a realization now, is the way that that hologram is unpacked, so to speak, is unique through each of us. It's not the same through any two people. So the mystics say that every one of our souls contains interplay and interconnections with everything else. Every one of our souls is vaster than the whole universe, but it's not the same universe. Each of us is a unique way of light relating to all the other forms of light in that universe, as Pure Light would say, with a capital U, which means it's more than just the physical part of the universe. Okay, so let's pause here for a moment. We're talking about being present. That means just like being fully here. And that's essential. I mean, being present to what we're experiencing as opposed to being in a separated state of consciousness, having our mind be off in the past or into the future or just someplace else, but right here. And in addition to that presence, we can realize that presence is not something static. We're not present to that which is, although if it was a snapshot, you could say that, but the what is always becoming into what is emerging in the next instant. So I'll say that again. What is, like right now, you are there listening to us, and hopefully you're being present to what we're sharing with you. And so you could, if you're watching this recording later, you could hit pause and just, the screen would freeze and you would be present to what was, but you're not present to what is, because what is emergent. What is affected by you in relationship to what you're experiencing. The way that the light that comes from each of us is interplaying with the light of your being, even though you could say the content of what each of you is hearing may be the same words, but the experience can't possibly be the same for any two people, because you are unique beings, because we are unique beings. And so the dance that takes place between us, even though we're scattered across the country, and some of you in other countries, and some of you will be listening to this at other times, at later times, there's an interplay that is always taking place. And so we'd like to be able to live in that emergence. We'd like to be able to live in that emergence. And we'd like to be able to, if there was kind of like two dials, and one dial is how much the focus is on our manifest human side and how much the focus is on the divine side, we'd like to come to a balance between the two so that neither side has disappeared into the other. And it's not 1 + 1. It's something that anew is born through the meeting of those two. And that's what we've called the resurrection body. That's what we've called living in the world of the soul. Okay, so
I'll just say, Yahoo!
so each of us is a unique manifestation of the divine being discovering him herself, simultaneous as you discover yourself through the divine. The divine discovers him herself through you, and you discover yourself through your relationship with the divine. And that's in Pure Light, we talk about the different directions of meditation, the transcendent, and that's the one where we think about ourselves and our personal Lord or our personal angel. And then you would talk about the cosmic dimension, which is our interconnection with beings across time and space, and the turning within dimension, where everything is interconnected from within. And then what's, I think, unique to the Sufism that Hazrat Inayat Khan brought forth is the idea of awakening in life. So now here we come to the last part of the title of this series, making God a unique reality in your life. And what is that life? That life is not the life that's in our ordinary state of consciousness walking around in the world. And that life is not off in the transcendent realms someplace. That life is our embodied realization and experience of being a being of light, a unique expression of the divine that can only discover itself in a particular way through us, through our firm grounding in existence. And that existence is in whatever realm our consciousness is focalized, whether it is the external physical reality, but that reality becomes a transformed world. And we've, as Ravani Ross said, we've talked about opening the house of Spenta Almighty. And I love that phrase. I mean, it's like really opening up into the reality with a capital R that is billions of times richer than what was available through the limited perception of the senses and the limited conceptions of our mind, and even the limited emotions of our usual way of experiencing. It very much incorporates all of our humanness. It doesn't erase it, but it's also that opening up of becoming what we're calling in our book that's going to be published, becoming a human divine being, both sides. And we put, first we had a hyphen, but now we have human asterisk divine. That's kind of mystery in the middle there. We're kind of a hybrid being that's neither all divine, it's neither all human, it's what's born from both of those, that is a living, ongoing fulfillment of our divine purpose. It's transforming that divine impulse that was the impetus of the divine creating each of our souls. That, and I've said this before, it's like each of us is like a prayer of God, which was launched forth with God having no way of knowing what was going to become. There was a particular flavor or desire on the divine's part of what might become through us. And maybe even if you could think of God having some concept of what might become through us. But if we're really fulfilling our purpose, by definition, it has to be a surprise even to the divine being. The divine being could not have known or foreseen that which can come through the uniqueness of us in particular, not only just because of our uniqueness, but because of our relationship with every other unique form of the divine being. Think of the infinite permutations and possibilities, that not all of which could ever be realized in the age of the universe. So let's pause here and close our eyes for just a moment. And just realize, instead of trying to figure out how to bring it about, just see if you can take it as a fact, as a given, that you have a clear essence of your being that never can die. It is always there through any situation, through any circumstance, through joys, through sorrows, no matter how caught up you get in things, no matter how many times you forget who you are and what this existence is. That essence is always there beneath the surface of the things that might be occluding it temporarily from our awareness. And we talked about in the alchemical process, there's a stage in which our identity becomes adamant. It's just so solid, and that doesn't mean fixed. I mean, it can never be shaken. It's there. There's the deepest conviction of being that this is the essential nature of the expression of divinity in our being, that transcends time, that transcends space. So see if you can just allow yourself to feel that without trying to think about how you get to it. You don't have to think about how you get to who you are. Just allow yourself to open to it. Feel the always emergent sacredness of your being. And remember the words of Hasranat Khan when someone asked, does the soul journey through the planes? And he said, no, God journeys. So you are the embodiment of God's journey. So imagine the divine being is awakening as you, through you. We think we have to go so far to awaken to the divine. The divine being is right here. as it says in the Quran, closer to you than your jugular vein. Can you feel that intimacy, of that embrace, that never-ending embrace of the manifest being and the divine being, each experiencing the other, each awakening to the other? And can you feel the currents of light that are always flowing through you? The light that we receive and the light that we emit, the transformed light that comes from us, and all that's conveyed on that light in both directions. And back to the idea of that interface, and the larger it is, the more that can come through. That wonderful line of that simple song, "Oh my soul, it magnifies the Lord." So feel the reality of that, that your life magnifies the divine being. Your life magnifies the capacity of the divine being to shine forth into the world. In a way that can only take place through you. And the same is true of your experience in every realm, all the subtle realms as well. The same holds. Imagine God awakening to God's angelic nature, to God's nature as pure spirit. God awakening through the human, through all of nature, through the elements. The music of the spheres, the symphony of light that is a never-ending proclamation of discovery, celebration of emergent divinity. As I said last time, we could have just as well called this class, instead of making God a unique reality in your life, making your life a unique reality for God. May the heavens be reflected on the earth, Lord, that the earth may turn into heaven.
Amen.